Okay, class, today's lesson is a grammar lesson number 14, unit 28, which is the last unit of last lesson of the grammar lesson. Okay, so page number 110 till 113. Okay, so let's start the lesson now here. What we're going to do, the relative clause. So relative clause, what is the relative clause? So here, let's start how we define in the relative clause with who, which, that, or whose. Clause is the sentence inside a sentence, you know, the mini sentence is inside a sentence, we call them clause. But when we join the sentences, we have a different way of connecting. Yesterday, the last lesson of the grammar, we were using the linking word, linking the word, using the linking words to link the the clauses. So here, yesterday's lesson was in order, however, where different ways. But today's lesson is we're going to be about how we're going to use who, which, that, or whose to create a relative clause. So let's have a look at this part now. Definite relative clause is identify which thing or person we are talking about. Here, which person or thing we're talking about. So in this case, it answers which thing or which person. We don't use a comma. Yesterday, the last lesson of the grammar, we were using some of the linking words with the commas. Some of them necessary, depending on the position in a sentence. So now have a look at this one. For example, who and that. It refers to people. Who and that refers to people. Whom, we use it as well, but we use it in a formal English language, to whom it may concern, for example. Not, we don't say to who, you know, which is a bit informal when you introduce the subject this way. So whom and who, we use in the same positions, same ways, but whom is more like a formal language. For example, the man served me was very helpful. Can you see that? You can see that here. The man who, he is here, who, that. You can use either one of it, who or that. Served me was very helpful. So what is the main sentence, main part in this sentence? Look, have a look. The man, there was one man. Who was that man? He served me. Then one man, he served me. And then also again, he talking about the man himself was very helpful. So in this point, we have a two-part idea in here. First one is the man served me. The man served me. The second idea is the man was very helpful. Man was very helpful. So we use those two sentences together to make it as a one. That's why we use who and that. We call it definite relative clauses. Instead of in the man served me, the man was very helpful. Instead of that, we can use the linking word as a who or that for a person. So next one is over here is whose. Whose. Whose is a place of possessive adjective, definitely. Mine, yours, theirs, our, you know. So the girl, that is the girl whose photo was taken. You know, that girl. Again, and this idea of this sentence is that the girl's photo was taken. That is the girl. Those two ideas are joined together. That is the girl. The girl's photo was taken. Those two joined them together. We use whose. Why? Because the girls here is we use them as a possessive. Possessive word. That's why. Here we use it for whose. So which and that refers to things, definitely. Who and that is for person, people. Which and that it refers to things. For example, that is the machine. Or which or that makes paper. Machine, which paper? Which machine? That one makes paper cut. Or that is the machine which makes the paper. Okay, we're talking about the machine. There is a machine, that machine makes a paper. So we join them together by using which or that, relative clause. So when, who, which or that is the object. When we can leave it out. We can leave them out also some cases. We have, for example, both those examples, we cannot omit them. We cannot omit who, that, whose, which, that. We cannot omit them at all. But some cases we can remove, we can leave them. We don't, if it's not necessary, there is a case that we can remove. What is it? For example, over here, they sold the car. You see, they sold their car. And then we wanted, we joined those two sentences using by which or that. So look at this one. They is our subject over here. They in this sentence is subject. Subject of the sentence. Subject. Sold is a verb, right? And what about the car? The car is an object of a sentence. So now have a look at this one. We're trying to define the car, which and that. If you're going to see this which and that here, what are we talking about? What does it refer to? It refers to the car. Car here, the car. The car is in this sentence as an object. If the relative, defining relative clause is describing about the object, we can remove it. Instead of saying, they sold the car which we wanted, instead of that, you can say, they sold the car we wanted. We don't need it, because why? We don't need to have, this is object, that means which and that is also object. In one sentence, we cannot use two object. So you can remove object neglected by object that means two objects cannot be together. That is why. Okay. So now let's move on to the next page, next slide over here. So, but there's a non-defining clauses with who, which, and whose, non-defining. The previous one was defining. For example, the men, we were defining the men over here, define the men together. Who was defining the men? This is the subject. Whose? That is the girl whose, the girl whose photo was taken. That is the machine which or that makes paper. Those are defining, but in our case of next slide is a bit different, which is non-defining. For example, where do we use them? We often use non-defining clause in formal writing. Informal writing. So just think of the ideas, and I will explain it later. We often use it in non-defining clause in formal writing. It also is description of place or people. Can give a reaction or comment on and fact. This way we can use non-defining. It doesn't define. Instead, it gives extra information. Sometimes it doesn't define. What does it do? It gives extra information. Also, non-defining clause can be subject or object in a sentence. So let's have a look at the examples now. Melanie works in hairdressers. Okay. So now let's define it. This is our main idea of the sentence, that the sentence over here, we are trying to change the sentence in the different ways. Okay. How are we going to do that? I'm going to show you that now. Melanie works in a hairdresser's. Okay, this is the main idea. So Melanie, who lives next door, works in the hairdresser. Let's have a look at this one. Who lives next door? If you can see this part of construction of the sentence, this part of the sentence has been separated by commas. Okay? Melanie, who lives next door, works in a hairdresser. If you can see that the white part, Melanie works in the hairdressers, right? Still we have the same sentence over here. But here, who lives next door? What makes it non-defining sentence? Non-defining sentence here, now have a look at this part over here. We often use non-defining clause in for description of place or people. Can give a reaction to it or comment or fact. Also, it doesn't define. For example, who is not defining the Melanie gives extra information. So now here, this sentence, the who lives the next door. This is non-defining. Why is it non-defining? Why is that? Because it just gives extra info. And sometimes when it gives extra information, it can be omitted. What does that mean? It means without it, it can stand, it can make sense. It can make sense. So now have a look at this one. Melanie works in the hairdressers. It has the same idea. Melanie, who lives next door, works in hairdresser. Who lives next door? Does it give much, does it define about the Melanie? It's not really. With this yellow part, with or without, the sentence can stand alone, it still can make sense. That's what it means. So let's have a look at next example over here. Here it says, the severe thunderstorms, which nobody had forecast. This forecasted, there's a mistake here, forecasted. Grammatical mistake, forecasted. I would like you to add it on this part. Okay. Forecast. Nobody had forecasted, caused floods in several places. This part of the which nobody had forecast is non-defining. Why? Because sentence can work can stand on alone. It just gives extra information. It just gives extra information, not defining anything. Okay, what does it supposed to define? The thunderstorm. But we didn't say the thunderstorm. What kind of thunderstorm? Okay, that's why it doesn't define. Next one, Van Gogh, whose painting now sell for millions, hardly managed to sell any during his lifetime. As you know, that Van Gogh is the famous painter. Last of his painting is that he drew himself. I'm not that artistic about that, but this is which is very famous. One of the famous painting. So let's say whose painting now sells for millions. Now here, Van Gogh hardly managed to sell any during his lifetime. The main idea of the sentence is Van Gogh didn't sell well during his time of his paintings, which his painting didn't help in his lifetime much. That's what that's the main idea. But there is another idea is whose painting now sell for millions. This part gives just extra information about the Van Gogh's painting, Van Gogh. You know, now, you know that all around the world, the Van Gogh painting is a huge hit and very famous, and also is in the national, some countries they call it national treasure. So it's just giving extra information, as I have mentioned above. That's how it works, the non-defining relative clauses with which, who, which, and whose. refers to human or person, which is for the refers to a thing, whose is a possessive, as we have explained before. Okay, now the next slide is over here. Here, comparison. So how do we compare it? Let's have a look. That's the girl whose photo was taken. Here, this example, but that is the girl. Her photo was taken. When you put them together, which girl? It comes that girl whose photo was taken. It is identifying one. Because why? When you which girl that they say whose photo was taken, which is identifying the girl, which is defining. Okay. So about next one, Melanie, who lives next door, works in the hairdressers. What does that mean? Melanie works in hairdressers. Okay. Melanie lives next door. If you see this sentence structure, okay, if you see the structure of a sentence, here, Melanie in the sentence is a subject, and this sentence it is a subject. So it doesn't define actually. Melanie lives next door, Melanie works in hairdresser. So that's why it's not, this gives just extra information about Melanie. That's why it is as we say, it is non-defining. Next one, Sarah lent his gym camera, Sarah lent Jim her camera, which was practically new. Which camera? Her camera. What is that? Extra information, which was practically new. She gave her camera, but that camera was new. It means it gives, there's a sentence, new information, extra information, which is non-defined. I hope this will give you the clear understanding about how it can be cleared up. So let's go on to the next one here. Identifying people and things. Now here we have exercise B, C, and D, E. So we have 4 exercises. We're going to complete the exercises partially. Okay, I'm going to complete the half, another half, you're going to complete it on your own. Okay, so identifying people and things. Here are some sentences found in a lifestyle magazine, combined to 2 sentences, 2 ways, using the words given. For example, they interviewed the player. She had won the competition. So, the player who they interviewed had won the competition. They interviewed the player who had won the competition. So here, the player who they interviewed, but here the player who won the competition. So you're going to put you're going to define the sentence in 2 different ways. So here, my cousin bought a car. It cost £20,000. My cousin bought a car. Okay. Bought a car which costed 20,000 pounds. But the car, now that I'm talking about the car, the car who that my cousin bought. Sorry, hold on. Let me see my sentence again. The car cost 20,000. Okay. So the car who my cousin bought a car. Okay. The car that no. That the car that my cousin bought. Sorry, cousin cousin boat cost 20,000 pounds. Okay. So could you put them together like this? Okay, or maybe I'll put them outside because it's not that clear. The car that my cousin bought cost 20,000 pounds. So the parents of young men were refugees. My sister works with him. The parents of the young man who works with my sister were refugees, or that my sister works with a young man who was refugees. Okay, so here, thieves burgled a house. The owners were on holiday. The owners of the house, owner of the house were on holiday. Sorry. Who? Okay, hold on. Okay. So now, over here. The thieves burgled the house. The owners were on holiday. The owners of the house were on holiday. Or owners, you're going to fill here, were on holiday. So, in 5, 6, and 7, 8, you're going to do that on as a self-assignment. Okay? So we need to move on to the next exercise. Here. See, given information about well-known people. Here. For example, Bill Clinton was a president from this and that. He was born in Hope. It is a small town in Arkansas. Bill Clinton, who was a US president from this and that, was born in Hope, which is a small town in Arkansas. So let's fill this part. So now the data. Virginia Woolf, her sister was a painter. She wrote A Room of One's Own. The book deals with the difficulties for women in a man's world. So let's try to figure out this one. So here, Virginia Woolf, and whose sister was a painter. If you think it is the main information, you can leave it like that, but this is extra information. We have to use a comma. Painter. The Virginia Woolf wrote A Room of One's Own. Okay. Owns. So the Virginia Woolf wrote A Room of One's Own, which deals with the difficulties. So rest of the exercise, you're going to complete it like this. I'm sorry, this is the wrong page of the exercise has been attached here. So please, here, I'm going to here. Please check on your book, and complete the exercise. All right. So I'm going to leave this part on the side here, over here. Okay. So sorry about that. And then let's see the next exercise. Here, comments are on facts or things. Underline the word which refers to. For example, they spent the whole afternoon in the garden, which lay behind the house. What does it identify? The word which refers to, this refers to the garden. For example, Brian was in the army for 9 years, which explains his respect for discipline. That means here the word which refers to the Brian's 9 years in the army, you know? Okay, now next one. Sarah read War and Peace in just 2 weeks, which is probably a record. Which? What does it refer to? It refers to just 2 weeks. The War and Peace is quite a big novel, you know that. It's more than the size itself is fine, but the language itself is written very difficult to understand, to move on that fast. It's one of the famous novel, but it isn't that easy to complete it in short time. So we finish it in just 2 week time. It's just like probably a record. That's what it means. So Dennis let me borrow his car, which is practically new. So which is refers to the car. The car. Which car? The car is practically new. Another one. We often visit the Lake District, which is very good for hiking. Word which refers to the Lake District. The manager accused Bill of stealing, which almost led to strike. Which? What does it refer to? Of stealing. Because of that almost led to strike. Okay, that was quite simple, wasn't it? So the last exercise is going to be this one, Frido Kahlo. How are we going to do it here? Complete the text by writing relative pronouns and including comma if it's necessary. When do we use a comma? When we provide extra information. Okay, so here, artist Frida Kahlo, who died in 1954, is becoming more and more popular. As a child, she suffered from polio, left her right leg thinner than her left. So now we're going to write it. What is going to be relative pronouns? Which? Polio is kind of sickness. So it's a thing that's why we say which. Left her right leg thinner than her left. She disgraced by this wearing skirt, reached to her ankle. So, okay, which again. Or also sometimes you can, some cases you say that. She had several sisters, but was closest to her. She had several sisters, but was closest to her father, encouraged her to study medicine. This is her father, closest one, which is that refers to a person. That's why we're going to use who. Who encouraged her to study the medicine. One day, when she was 18, a bus she was traveling in and was hit by a car. So bus refers to a thing, that means which she was traveling in, it was hit by a car. In the accident, she broke several bones, including some in her back. These injuries resulted in many operations. These injuries, what is it? Which? Sorry, which resulted her in many operations. Affected her